It's premiere week, which means the return of fan favorites like Scandal and The Big Bang Theory. There's also a slew of new shows making their debut. Among them, the family comedy Black-ish, which generated plenty of buzz even before it aired. WGBH News arts editor Jared Bowen has more.
ABC is wading into some new territory in Black-ish, which premiered last night. The comedy centers around the Johnsons, a wealthy black family living in Los Angeles. Executive producer Anthony Anderson plays Andre, a successful executive who's concerned his family is losing touch with its cultural heritage. In the pilot, he also has mixed feelings about his promotion to senior vice president of his ad agency's urban division.
I said I wanted to be the first black SVP for Stevens and Lido, when actually I wanted to be the first SVP who happened to be black.
What's the difference? Obama's the first black president? I mean, does that make him any less president? No.
No, because he's the first black president of the United States, not the first black president of the urban United States.
Obama's the first black president?
You're doing a bang-up job over here.
Black-ish premiered to strong numbers, nearly matching the ever-popular Modern Family. But whether it stands the test of time likely depends on how well it manages to balance humor with its social commentary. Here to delve deeper into the cultural issues at play here is Peniel Joseph. He's a history professor and founding director of the Center for the Study of Race and Democracy at Tufts University. Welcome back to Greater Boston.
Thanks for having me.
So you watched the show, I watched the show last night, and my first question is kind of a strange one because I watched it and there's so much conversation about this show right now that is it controversial? Should it be? Is it an issue that it's on the air? These sorts of questions, and I'm wondering why are we even talking about it? Because it's a sitcom like most others.
Well, I think since The Cosby Show, we haven't had a sitcom that was popular that really explored the black community or black life in a three-dimensional way. This is this first attempt, and what's interesting is this is about not just race but class, because not only are they African American, but they're very self-consciously well off, affluent. They live in a spectacular house. Their kids have, all the latest gadgets and toys. Their father's an exec, and their mother is a surgeon, not just a doctor. So it's an extraordinary kind of attempt in the 21st century.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. We have a clip about that because one of the things that I was struck by was how much money became a part of their identity in their show. So let's just watch this clip, and then I'll get your take on the other side.
I'm going to be the first black SVP at Stevens and Lido. This job is about more than just money to me. It's about breaking down barriers.
Yeah, it's breaking down barriers, equally important to money. But just so that I'm clear, there is a salary increase, right?
Yes, baby.
Okay.
So why was it so imperative that their financial identity be wrapped up in who they are as well?
I think one, there's not a huge number of African American elites even in 2014, and I think when we think about The Cosby Show, they didn't talk about the fact that they were wildly successful, right? They, Cliff was a doctor and Claire was a lawyer, and she became sort of one of the only black women who was a partner at a Tony law firm in New York City. I think here they're self-consciously talking about it, and it's important because African Americans aren't necessarily, a lot of them, wealthy, and this is new money, and they're trying to figure out who are they now that they have this new money. Are they still the same people?
Yeah, because from what I understand in the creation of The Cosby Show, it was intentional that they never talked about their wealth. It was okay to show it and demonstrate the security that they had, but that was very intentional.
No, absolutely. Bill Cosby made that a point where they were going to be an affluent African American family, but we were going to take that as a given. I think this show, Black-ish, is talking about class in a very specific way. I think it's a refreshing way because we live in a context where not a lot of people have money, black or white. So the idea that these are people who are affluent, but that they think about money and they're not from money. And they think about what is this money doing to our children and what is it doing to the way in which we identify as African Americans.
So what about the title Black-ish, which the executive producers, including the star we just saw, Lawrence Fishburne, is another executive producer, they've talked about how Black-ish means everybody's a little bit black in 2014, whether you're Justin Timberlake or anybody in this show.
Yeah, and it's the universality of being black and how African American culture culture really is American culture, whether people are Native American or Asian American, Latino. He talks about, you know, Robin Thicke and Justin Timberlake being, you know, black-ish in terms of R&B. You know, white folks can obviously dance, Asian American dancers. So I think it's about the universality of the black experience and how that's touching everybody's life in 2014.
Some of the writing is, I mean, I think it's very sharp writing, first of all, and it's also very strong and it's very pointed when you pull back and look at the social commentary a little bit. Yeah. What did you make of that, where the show should be going at this point?
Well, I think it was a strong first episode. Right now, there was a voiceover by the lead actor. I don't know if they're going to continue that. The success of the show is going to have us depend on these characters. Cosby was a success because we cared about Claire and Cliff and Theo and the children. So we have to make these characters three-dimensional human beings. I think one of the things they should talk about is really what is the price that African Americans pay for this kind of success, right? One of the things you see in the pilot is his young son wants a bar mitzvah, even though he's not Jewish, because he just wants to party. So, and he's playing field hockey instead of basketball. And how do we define black success? Very interesting themes.
Well, I mean, how much do you see that? Because that's another theme that really resonated with me. Now that I'm thinking, in a 22-minute show, they crammed a lot in that very first episode. But this issue of the generational divide and how substantial it is that, you know, that the father in this case feels that his son, who's probably about 20 years younger, is in a completely different world than who he grew up being, a black man.
No, absolutely. I think that part of this is like, how do we teach millennials about race in America? And if you're a successful African American family, do you have to teach your children about a struggle that they're not necessarily going to face in the same way as you? And I think that's one of the things he tries to get across in the first episode. And you see he tries to do an African rites of passage in that first episode. And it's important because this is a show that's not necessarily confronting things like poverty. Maybe they will, but they're going to have to do it through other characters because they live in a fabulous neighborhood, and they live in a wealthy neighborhood, and they're a wealthy African-American couple. But what's interesting, too, is it's an intact family, right? So it's a family that has a mother, a father, 4 kids, and a grandfather all living, which is a great and powerful message that's sending.
Well, I recently spoke with Malcolm Jamal Warner, who's in town starring in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner at the Huntington Theater Company. And even before seeing the show, I asked him about what it was like to work on The Cosby Show. And so we'll talk about the threads in a second. But here's what he had to say about what the aim was just on the set and their agenda there.
There's so much that I'd learned from him, and most of it was just watching him. But I do remember the thing that he really impressed upon all of us when we were doing the show was go for the honesty, go for the truth. Because there's going to be humor in every situation. When you start going for the laughter is where you mess up the truth of the moment.
Which I thought was really, really profound, especially since I'd also interviewed somebody who worked with Bob Newhart who had a completely different take. But as we're talking about The Cosby Show on the 30th anniversary of its launch this week at NBC, is that still the thread? I mean, is honesty basically what you saw in Blackish last night? Yeah,
I did. I think that it's an honest depiction, or trying to be, of a certain strata of the African American community, one that we often forget to talk about and discuss, because there are black people who are successful. The numbers are too small in the United States, but they're there, and it's trying to tap into their experience because they're very successful. They have universal experiences, they have multiracial friends, but they're still encountering different experiences just because of their race and the history of race in America.
Very quickly, are there any risks in a show? Any red flags you saw last night in depictions? Well,
I think the voiceover was a little too precious in a way. Like, we're a smart enough audience where you don't have to tell us the expository dialogue we don't need. You should just let the show just play out. But I think it's very promising if we get to care about these characters.
Well, Peniel Joseph, great talking to you. It sounds like 2 thumbs up from us, but great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.